He lived in the community, and you saw him everywhere. So he cuts his own yard, and he comes to ball games, and you know, you see him at church, and you see him at the grocery store, and so he was never casual. Mr. Robinson, if he whatever you seen him do, and he had on a white shirt and a tie. We used to think that does he sweat? You know, because he always was dressed like, well, like men of his generation were. They never went out in public unless they were going to do manual work. They were always dressed to kill, for lack of a better term. I remember you know, everybody used to go downtown back in those days, and he always dressed as if he was going to church. He was very dignified. I guess that whole, for lack of a better term, that whole Sidney Poitier, that whole, the way they carried them, people back then carried themselves. They lived by a standard, and that standard was always, I got to be better. I got to put in a little bit more effort. So I've got to look better. I've got to be cleaner. I've got to be smarter. I've got to be better prepared when I go to a meeting. I got to be concerned. If I'm the only person, he used to say, if I'm the only person in the room that's an African American and a statement is made and I disagree with it, everybody will look to you. He said, would look to me. And if I didn't respond, they perceive it as the whole community agreed with what they were doing. And so I think that people in that generation just took responsibility for the whole community. I remember him being very community oriented, and any public meeting that you ever went to, he was always there and always had some input that was very positive. I was on the Board of Education at the time, and I became chairman. And at the time, Mr. Robinson he's been a big proponent of, especially with boys and low-income children. They got to learn to read. They got to learn to read. That's the whole thing. If they can't read, they're going to jail. That was his thing. So with Fairgarden, he always wanted, Knox County wanted to tear the building down. And Mr. Robinson said, no, we need to build a reading center, a preschool reading center, so we can get these kids on grade level before they start school. So I wanted to rename the school for him. And he said, no, he said, you know, there's lilac, ivy, Oakland, magnolia. He said, some garden, Beeman Lake. And I never thought of it. He said, let's leave it the way it was originally designed. And you know, and I said, that's mighty big of you. I tried to force it simply because the historical significance of him would have been greatly increased if we'd have named it the James Robinson preschool, but he wouldn't let us do it. He insisted that we not do it. He said he's too humble a man. So that said, to me, said a lot more about him than anything else. But as time passed, I realized that it's very much more important that young people of this generation know who the people's shoulders they're standing on. Well, Mr. Robinson used to make a statement that the real measure of a man is a public official was a man that could make hard decisions and know that he'd never get the credit for it. And so to me, he wanted to make, he's living through young men and young women, preschoolers, being able to read and having options in life. You know, he lives on as they, you know, even though he's passed on, he lives on because decisions he made and things, efforts that he supported, they're still sowing seeds. Mr. Robinson was one of those kind of guys that would go, he would try to help people without anybody else knowing. You know, you get a call late at night. I mean, several times he would call. I know for me particularly, he would call late at night and he'd say, you know, a certain administrator at one of the schools is struggling a little bit. And said, could you go ahead and have a conversation with him and tell him to give me a call? I can advise him on something. So I'm assuming that he'd been in meetings where he'd heard things, and so he said, you know, it might come over different if I went straight to him, me being their supervisor. So why don't you just give him a call and tell him, give me a call, and we'll go out for tea or coffee or whatever. And he said, and he said, I can really help him through this. I think he would say that we need to regain that pride that we used to have in our communities, and we need to, not that it's entirely gone, it's just that a way of walking and talking and being respectful to one another, that was very important to him. And I remember at times we would be on the opposite side of issues, and when I was on the school board, and he said, Sam, one thing that you always have to let people know is that I respect you and you respect me. We have a right to disagree. Well, I could only say that, you know, if young people would grow up and work half as hard at being a good person as he did, the world would be a lot better.